All right, welcome everybody. We have another live stream today, and we're going to continue the discussion that we've been having over the last few weeks. But rather than talking about performance of LLMs and post training and things of that nature, what we want to do today is talk about the human side of building agents. And to discuss that, I have the pleasure of having with me today Ben from our design team. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, Ahmed. Thanks for having us on, and excited to have this conversation with you today.
I'm equally excited today because I know you and I and Ben joins us from our UK team, so we are truly global here. He and I have spent some time together towards the end of last year, and obviously we continue to talk about the topic near and dear to both of us around agents. And one topic that's come up is how do you design for a world where 92% of knowledge workers have never really interacted with AI. And so that's sort of the thesis for us is how do you actually introduce people thoughtfully into this new space? And of course, for the people who have been down this road a few times using technologies that have started to see better and better abstractions over the last couple of years, how do you give them something that they can truly feel is thoughtful and builds on some of the same intuition that they have already? So with that, Ben, is there something that you'd want to maybe start off to discuss?
Yeah, I think just to dial in on the point that you brought up, Ahmed, a lot of people are not using AI at work. We see a lot of growth and hype around these kind of like agent interfaces like ChatGPT and Claude, but kind of how that translates into work through, various reports that we see coming out is very minimal. Then on the other hand, you have some people that are like really deep into it and they're automating a lot of their work. And obviously, how do we bridge that gap between those two places? And I think for us at DevRev, and also, from just seeing what customers have found success with on the market, I think you have to remember that we're all people. And at the end of the day, how we design for those people and how we think about how they use it in their workplace is ultimately kind of where I have seen the most success. Because I think, just if I sum it up really quickly, adopting AI is kind of like adopting a new team member. And by that I mean, Imagine if you started with someone new at your business and you gave them no onboarding, no context on what they needed to do, and asked them to kind of deliver everything within the first quarter. I think you'd find you'd be setting them up to fail, and the same is true for AI.
Absolutely. So with that, is there maybe something you could pull up on the screen so we can start to visualize this? I think it'll make things feel a little more real. So if we can just kind of see something and maybe you can describe what you're seeing. I've got a few questions that I think folks, as we go through this conversation, we've very purposefully left out real interactions. Typically when I have somebody from our product or engineering team on, we will just show simply the experience, whether it's a live experience or a beta experience or a recorded experience. We will show the exact experience. And what I wanted to do is here keep Ben in his element. And Ben works out of design tools, and so even if what we're looking at is live already, and some of what we're going to be looking at is quite live already, what we wanted to do was just kind of look at it through the lens of a designer and the tools of a designer. So here we are sitting in Figma. So walk us through what we're looking at.
Yeah, so I think one of the big problems people have with agents is always where to get started. And so I thought we're better to start in our talk than kind of your first experience of our agent studio. And I think for many people, kind of that where should I start question is often the biggest one. Have I defined a real problem? I've been told to use AI. I've never used it before in my work, back to the statistics we were talking about. And I think, so how we started thinking about building this product, over 12 months ago was like, how do we help people take that first step? How do we help them learn as they grow with AI in their everyday work, but also in their jobs?
Yeah, that makes sense. And so this is sort of your welcome screen, and it talks about build, test, deploy, observe. Are those sort of the verbs? Is that a sort of almost a way for a person to frame what you think are the most important elements in responsible agentic, responsible upskilling of agents?
Yeah, exactly. I think those words are not by accident. It's kind of the model in which we wanted to create I call it a flywheel, call it a feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
The process in which you work with an agent, but also the process in which you go through to get your first agent live and then to start scaling it. And so, building, obviously, as I kind of spoke about it, when you come in to give a summary, is like, how do we help you get started? How do we help you test? How do we help you learn and like understand how agents are built and how they work? Or if you're a more advanced user, how do we give you the skills to kind of work with both natural language prompts and directly in code to build and scale your agent? And then how do we help you test it? Because no one wants to automate one question if it's a CX agent. So how do we help you do that at scale? How do we help move away from kind of those old deterministic practices and create something organic and give you the confidence to deploy it? And then also deploying is an interesting one because agents now, CX agents took a while or were really popular 12, 18 months ago. But there's so many more types of agents that you can have now. And so how do we help you deploy those agents into the many different streams or use cases that you might have within your business? And finally, once you're out there, how do you understand what's going on? And importantly, how do you act on it and improve it?
Absolutely. And of course, as we go along, just a note to the audience, one thing that you'll notice is, as I continue to bring up ideas, one thing that happens as, a person with my background continues to engage with somebody from a design background is the sort of reframing of the question to something that is more human-centered, which I think is super important. And so that's a dynamic that hopefully comes through in this conversation. So let's start with maybe going through each of those respective areas. So first category is build. So the first question I have is, what are you building? Because I know there's a lot of confusion in the market. There's a lot of people that come in and say, you know what, you have to define agents, and people are thinking about billions of agents that will exist in the next 2 years. And we've been quite thoughtful about making sure that there's no agent sprawl, and so we've created this concept of agents, but also the fact that there are tools and there's skills and there's scoping of agents, so that rather than having thousands of agents inside your company, you can have maybe fewer agents, but you can continue to upskill them and make them more personalized over time. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I guess what we aim to try and do is obviously simplify this for the customer.
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting started, do I build how many agents do I build? What do those agents do? How do I get them to work together? Ultimately, at work, you have one person, they do a job. And that job may comprise of many different specialist items or specific workflows. And so we wanted to reflect that in the way that you build agents. Start by defining, the core scope, role, goals, parameters, and guidelines for that agent. But then, we give you the ability to extend that into much more detailed, specific workflows through the building of skills. And this way, we help avoid having agent sprawl, as you mentioned, so you don't end up with like 100 agents that do one thing. You might end up with 5 agents that do 20 things. And through that, we've also seen the performance benefits of having more defined scopes as well. And so it becomes more, I guess, scalable for a company.
Absolutely. And tell me about the fact that obviously what we're looking at is it's quite visual on the screen, but we want this to be a platform that's equally programmatic as well, right? So you can bring in high code if you've got high code that you want to be able to use to define a skill or what have you. And of course, you need to be able to interact with the agents programmatically as well. So all of that's going to be possible here as well.
Yeah. So what you have in the kind of the skills marketplace is the ability to, one, I guess, leverage what's already been done. Certain processes, frameworks, workflows might be reused across your business or might be quite common practice in your industry. But also you have the ability here to create, whether that's connecting to your own MCP tools, working through your own HTTPS kind of workflows and integrations with different APIs, so that you can start defining. And you're an advanced user, we give you the capability to extend and and add that in as well.
Absolutely. So, I mean, even though we're talking about it like it's a full-on builder experience, you could be a CFO who's buying a product that they don't necessarily want to build anything, or they don't want their team to invest time building anything for the time being. You could simply go onto the marketplace and get whatever capabilities you're looking for, or you could have our applied AI forward deployed team, define things that are more specific, more nuanced, more bespoke to your team, and that would work just as well. And maybe 2 years, 3 years down the line, you change your mind, you have the optionality to actually invest on your own. The builder experience goes from somebody who is completely not aligned on investing time to somebody who wants to do everything on their own and personalize things to the greatest extent. So you got to be able to cater to both, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because I don't think people realize that they already have the expertise in house. It's just the language barrier that probably exists at the moment. And so, external resources, be it our own applied AI team or a consultancy firm that you use, at the moment, the benefit they really bring to you is helping you ask the right questions, but they really understand the language of AI at the moment, because they're deep in it every day in a way your team might not be. But ultimately, the subject matter experts that really understand your processes and your systems and know exactly how to engage with your customers or how to triage an incident or a workflow internally, they're the people that are going to really help it scale. And so, the marketplace and our own internal teams can help you start seeing value, and also build time and, I guess, confidence internally for then those experts to take over and really optimize it. And that's also a consideration in how we design.
Yeah. So when the builder experience has to be able to cater to everybody, the person who doesn't want to build at all, through the marketplace, through partnerships, through forward deployed, and then of course people who want to construct something or compose, and then of course you've got people who truly want to build something that's quite unique for their business or their brand, what have you. That's really fascinating. So you go from build to, I guess, test. So walk me through that. Like, how do you think about test?
Yeah, I think, and that's a really interesting area, and I think we've spoken about it before. The benefit of AI is moving away from deterministic flows. I've seen companies with thousands of tree nodes in terms of how they manage their processes, and that becomes so complex to set up and manage. The benefit is, though, you have a high degree of confidence in how that works. Mm-hmm. And with testing, what we wanted to avoid was just shifting that logic into the test area. So you benefit from a quick start of using the probabilistic AI and the benefits of leveraging unstructured and structured data to answer questions. But we didn't want you to have to then go and reset up those same trees to properly evaluate it afterwards. And so the other benefit of AI is how it can help you develop these data sets, how it can help you run and process them at scale, and how it can help you set up evaluators to understand the correctness. But also, we wanted it to be an organic process that grows with you, because sometimes the reason that AI might work and the additional benefit is because your policies or your knowledge is wrong. So testing shouldn't just tell you that something's not working, but it should also help you evaluate what went wrong so you can fix it when you dig into that. And what you can see here is just a kind of a summary page of a test run.
Can we zoom in a little, Ben? Sorry.
Yeah, of course. So you've got this like summary where, once you've run your test run, you can see the token usage, the average latency on some of those responses. Here we've got the option to discuss with computer, which is a unique kind of AI agent that runs with our platform, and also is an assistant to help you kind of diagnose and understand better, especially if you're not an expert, but save you time to the likewise if you are an expert. But then once you kind of dig into those traces as well, you can start looking at the conversation and breaking down the decisions that the AI made as it went through in answering those questions, and ultimately then go and action or fix what went wrong. And I think, that's the kind of the end loop in testing as well. It's not just about knowing if it worked, but knowing what to do next when it didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, obviously, for a person who's a non-coder, this is where, it's one thing to go and assemble something through a marketplace. It's another to have to test that it works or not. Walk me through how we've maybe thought about making this simple for a person who's a non-coder or comes from a non-coding background. or a non-debugging background?
Yeah, so I guess it all comes down to the level of detail. When you first see or come in and see the summary, you can very easily see whether your question was answered wrong or right. And in the case that the answer is right, happy days, you don't have to do anything. But I guess it's when you start digging into items and you maybe realize that something's wrong, the breakdown here of these thinking steps are kind of what the AI has done at each step. So, how is it reasoned? And this is presented to you in natural language. What tools is it used? And by tools, I mean, in order to answer a question, it might need to look up some order information in your system, or it might need to use a knowledge skill to go and read through a document. And it's here that you can see, oh, my agent used my refund policy and it said that refunds were open for 20 days, but actually it's 10. But I realized that maybe my refund policy, I haven't updated it since we last changed the policy, and that's why it's wrong. And so, it helps you kind of understand and realize these things to then go on and fix.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's also an art to understanding how to define right and wrong, like in terms of assertions or in terms of validation, which I think is also something that maybe comes, more naturally to people who have been coding, and for people who haven't, perhaps even that step itself is quite challenging. So I do think that there's probably areas where we could continue to sort of coach, guide, onboard people, so that it becomes easier and easier to even be able to say, okay, yeah, this is what I'm trying to do. How do I create a validation description so you can tell me if, quote unquote, it was right or wrong, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's also where computer comes in, right? The same way that you want to test something, you can ask computer about the trace and get some more explainability from someone who's an expert, or an AI who's an expert in it. And so, having the ability to see that context within the system can bring that extra layer of visibility into the problem.
Absolutely. And I have noticed, over the last couple of years, that not only are interactive developer environments for developers getting more natural language inclined, and of course, embedding more of a conversational interface so that you can, let's say, vibe code and so on. Those are IDEs. Not everybody's going to have an IDE installed on their computer, but we're also now seeing products that are not IDEs at all, but they produce code. We've had that for 30 years now with what you see and is what you get type of website building interfaces and other things. But now they're getting even that much more interesting, where you can use, and I don't want to name any specific companies, but there's obviously companies out there that are driving a lot of their activity through people who have never coded in their life. And of course, they have to think about building and testing as well. Have you thought about, either doing user research or just, your own experiences or the team's experiences with those products, and how that helps you sort of have firm thoughts around the designing of a build and a test layer here?
Yeah, I think, one of the core things you do as a designer is, it's not just what you think, but it's what is also happening on the market, because no one comes into an experience completely fresh. Your kind of previous experiences with ChatGPT or with other tools influence what we call an affordance, or a set of learnings or expectations you might have of how something might work. And the benefit of those things, or those experiences, is you can tap into those to help make products and systems easier. So, as you start seeing certain patterns evolve, they're a way in which, we can help cut down the learning process for our own product, by leveraging kind of sometimes where you see things going on the market, but only when they make sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, maybe we get to, where the rubber meets the road. Talk to me about deploy.
Yeah, so the deployment tab is interesting, and I guess specifically for a customer or a business like DevRev, as we are, we don't just offer CX agents. And so what we had to think about there was, how do you enable somebody to build, or how does our platform enable you to build and deploy agents for different use cases? And so, what is part of a deployment? What channel do you want it to be over? do there need to be any specific behaviors or adaptations to the models or the way that your agent responds over that channel? For example, voice is very different to chat, is very different to email. And how do you wrap these up into the journey that a customer takes when they're setting up an agent, but also deploying? So it doesn't just start at deploy, but it starts off, back at the beginning. So by understanding what agent you want to build, we can then help you make the right decisions. So by the time you get to deployment and you're looking at the different channels that you might want your agent to run out on, those ultimate decisions have helped lead you to success. You don't have to go back and rebuild something.
And, obviously we led this conversation by talking about an analogy of thinking of having an agent be like the way you would, introduce yourself or be introduced to a teammate, let's say. So if you think of it that way, then let's say a person is deploying an agent or redeploying an agent with a new version, with new skills. How does a person become aware of that, right? How do the rest of the people on the team become aware of the new aspects of this agent? The fact that the agent is now not the same as it was before. It's a new version of this agent, if you will. Maybe it can do more, it can do less even, perhaps. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I get so discoverability is, I think, one of the big problems in AI at the moment. A lot of these interfaces are so stripped back, which they're very inviting to talk, but they're not very good in helping you understand what to do, which is perhaps why we're seeing, only a very small number of customers using AI. And so a lot of this comes down to kind of, one, what's the channel that you're engaging with it on? I mean, for a customer support agent, we probably don't want you to know that the agent model has changed, just that your question and responses get better. But I guess you then think of the behavior of an agent, and you can use traditional kind of graphical user interface items like release notes and beta tags and things like that to kind of help people understand. But also, I think one part that I haven't seen too many companies do is really think about how the agents interact with them. How do they help suggest or clarify, or how does this become part of the way that you work with it versus just kind of having a list of functions? Because if I ask the agent to help me with something, that relationship at the moment is very much like do and or request and provide that answer back versus like, hey, this is how I could respond to this. Which path would you like me to take? And I think you need to make it more organic. Otherwise, it's not a natural part of the adoption of those features.
Absolutely. And, we've talked about the fact that, agent comes with, is defined through instructions and objectives, but also capabilities. And, the capabilities could be a long list of, a registry of skills, right? And of course, whether or not it uses skills and how often it actually uses skills, or more specifically, how often a person may observe that agent using the skill in their respective interactions. These are not things that are easy to define and easy to build around. You can't just say, here are all the capabilities that I have, and drop it down in a data dump to a customer or a user. It doesn't work after a certain scale. So I do think, and of course, people may not remember what people, what agents, machine agents can and can't do at any given time, especially if it's changing. So I think making that more discoverable is quite an interesting problem. I think about it myself because obviously we're using computer every day. You and I were using computer discussing this conversation. It's fascinating because obviously every day we're improving computer, and probably the instructions behind computer and the capabilities of computer continue to evolve. It could be as simple as just new tools in MCP, or it could be actual skills that were defined and embedded into the registry. It's hard to sort of keep everybody up to date on that. And frankly, not everybody needs to know that. I mean, there may be certain things that we might want to introduce more quickly, and some things maybe organically you pick up, or the community sort of brings up if it has real value. So tell me about that. Like, how do you think about even just when to make things more implicit, when to make things more explicit in terms of how products get better? I've seen both work successfully, but from a design perspective, how would you want to go to market?
Yeah, I think there's no one right or wrong answer, and I think there's no right or wrong answer for each person. And I think that's an important part. You need to cover off the basics. You need a marketplace, you need a defined place or a defined way to be able to call and browse these skills.
Mm-hmm.
That's for certain. And when you're feeling curious, you can go and look at them, or if you can't quite remember, you can easily access and pull these items up. But I think the more interesting bit, and becomes like, what is the role that memory and context play?
Mm-hmm.
How does, and especially, talking about computer here, not just agents, but how does the way that the agent observes what I do and sees the repetitive things that I do contribute to the way that it interacts with me? Because ultimately, any form of adoption comes when you have a need. And so understanding when the need or the friction is most high and the solution is the most required is always the best time to kind of push for adoption. And how you make that part of someone's working process versus, constantly throwing things up in front of them.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I do want to talk a little more about Observe. So we'll get to that, but I've got one other question since we're still on the deploy step. After you deploy something, what are the types of signals, whether they're quantitative, qualitative, what have you, internal, external, that you are immediately curious about, just as a designer?
Yeah, I think it's always the known unknowns. So when you test for the key use cases and you set your parameters so you're working within a safe environment. But what's always interesting is how people actually use and engage with it. And the reason I say that is because that's what helps you learn. That's what helps you learn what to do next.
Yeah.
So for me, it's obviously, you want the confidence and you want to see it performing as you expect through the testing that you've done. But then it becomes like, what are the new things that people are trying to do? And where does this need to go next? Because you can have hypotheses, but people like to surprise you, and that's a good thing.
So with that, maybe we do talk about Observe, because it's going to be the same. Everybody is sort of a designer when they go and create a new agent and they deploy it. So how do you think about observing what we've put out there?
Yeah, I guess like observation is like anything, and it also ties back to testing a little bit. One, you want to know at a very high level, is everything okay? Is it performing how I expect it to? Mm-hmm. And we do this via, key performance metrics and links into evaluators and the testing criteria that you've set up. So is my agent giving fast answers? Is my agent giving correct answers? But then is everything running as expected? We've seen recently like Amazon go down, and these things can have wide impacts. And so, we just want to give people at a glance the confidence that everything's going well and I don't need to action anything, because observability is really all about actionability. And so once you're okay with that, then how do you start digging into and looking into the trends of your agent's performance? And so, we have a number of dashboards that you can set up and run through different filters and queries on requests and answer types to enable you to easily dig down. But then, it's observation going from that high level analytics right down into kind of the individual user sessions and kind of understanding, based on trends or groups, how are people actually using it, and what do I need to do to start fixing it, and where are my gaps? One of the big things we're working on at the moment is how can we be more suggestive with the knowledge and information gaps that exist, to help make that detail easier for you as well.
Absolutely. And I know we're getting to the end of this, but folks, for everybody who's watching this, thank you for your time, but also you can continue to have this conversation with us on Discord. So we'll pop that up here, but do join us on our Discord community, and we can have this chat on an ongoing basis. But I think Ben, one thing that I found is that there is sort of this pyramid of needs around observability. It kind of starts with people saying correctness, accuracy. Is it there? Safety, trust, governance, right? do I have any pitfalls there? So that's kind of where it starts. And then increasingly it's about, okay, am I seeing outcomes and ROI, right? Observe if the outcomes and ROI are there. But then after you get through all of those things, I mean, I've already talked about 4 layers of observability. Then you start to get into, the way you would think about maybe your human teammate and say, how's the communication? How's the attitude, right? Are there things around that almost are more categorically qualitative? So how do you think about just the breadth and the full gamut of what people are trying to observe, whether it's safety and making sure there's no profanity, no brand risk, things of that nature, making sure accuracy is there, but then also the other side of it, as I mentioned. Like, tell me how you navigate it when it's so broad.
Yeah, I like to think about kind of like what are the jobs to be done, or what are the like criteria that good looks like for your agent, and what do you want to avoid, and then how do you measure that? So obviously we have a lot of performance metrics, but this is the interesting part where your evaluators come in. So how are you defining correctness? How are you defining completeness of an answer? And then to kind of some of the other points you put in, like what is good, what does your brand look like? How does your brand need to sound, and how do you want your agent to act, and is it doing those things? And so it's having the scope to then start being able to get into setting up and measuring those items as well. And also, is there an outcome to it? Because it's great to measure things, but what do you want to do as a result of measuring that, and how do you want to act on it?
Absolutely. So with that, I think what we should do is wrap this up. Obviously, you and I will continue to talk about agents and designing experiences to build, test, deploy, and observe agents in the future. And for those who've joined us here, we appreciate your time. Hopefully, you go and install our product and start to test this for yourself. And we'd love to get your feedback. And we'll do this again, Ben. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ahmed. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Cheers. Bye.